Hi, today we're going to talk about the difference between story and plot. They are two sides of the same coin. If you haven't watched a video about what is a story, it might be a good place to start. When we think about story, as we talked about in the other video, stories are told in chronological order, or at least that's how we interpret them in our minds. What a story encompasses is the whole entirety of the events. What plot is how we depict those events. So ultimately, your script is going to be the plot of your story. But they are not exactly the same thing. The plot is how you tell your story. A good way to understand this difference is thinking in terms of mysteries. Right? Mysteries are a really good way to help us understand what the difference is between story and plot. Because how mysteries operate is the following. We are trying to figure out what the full story is, but we don't have the full story. And as the plot unfolds, we will understand the full story. So let's think of in terms of murder mysteries. We can think of one of the most iconic murder mystery movies of all times, in my very humble opinion, which is Seven by David Fincher. Seven starts with cops finding a body. That's where the plot starts. That's our point of entry in the movie. Cops find a body. And as the movie progresses, we're trying to understand what is the whole story. Who is this killer? Why is he killing these people? So if we think of it in terms of plot versus story, the beginning of the plot coincides with the beginning of your movie or your book or your script. The story, however, started before this movie started. It started when this killer decided to kill someone and found the person and killed them and left a body, and then someone discovered it and called the cops. All this is part of the story that we don't get to see. That's the difference between plot and story. The plot is how we're telling the story. Sometimes they will coincide. If there's no mystery, it might start when the story starts, and that goes on and on. And sometimes there is a hole in the story that we're trying to fully understand. We're trying to understand what the full story is. So in a really great TV show called Broadchurch, the plot starts where the story starts. We get to meet this family and we get to meet everybody, and then a kid goes missing. And that part of the story is missing until the very end of the show, where we understand what happened in those missing hours, and then we get the full story. When you're thinking about your own projects, it's important to start with story first. As the author, you have to know what the full story is, and afterwards you can decide what the best way to tell that story is. And a very classic way to plot your stories is through 3-act structure, which we will 100% cover on this channel. If you want to get those videos, click subscribe and you'll be notified when these videos drop. But that is a really important distinction between story and plot. It might be more of an intellectual distinction, but as an author, it's good for us to be in control of the story so we can understand what the best way to plot it is. Using our same example from the other video, in Pulp Fiction, the plot is told out of order. But we know in our heads that Vince Vega, spoiler alert, he doesn't die then come back from the dead. Those things are told in different order. That the events in the diner happen before the events in the apartment where he dies, right? We know these things are told out of order, but in our minds we can put them in order. But when you're telling your story, it is more efficient as a storyteller to know what the full story is and then understand what the best way to plot it is. And a really good way to do that is learning about structure, which we will learn very shortly. Thank you so much. If you like what you saw, please subscribe and check out the website. Thank you so much.